baseball! You're a loony.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado.
And I am Dan Simon, broadcasting live from the Studio Simon Stumper headquarters in Louisville, Kentucky.
Dan, good morning. Hello, how are you?
I am fantastic, Paul. How are you? What's going on?
Well, this episode has made me think about the fact that Baseball Palooza, my annual road trip with college buddies, is right around the corner. I spend the entire year looking forward to it, almost literally, Dan. As soon as Baseball Palooza ends, I start thinking about where are we going next year? When are schedules coming out? With the Major League Baseball takeover of minor league baseball, the schedules are actually coming out quite a bit earlier than they used to. I used to have to wait till like November, sometimes December to get these schedules. And now I'm getting them in, usually right at the end of the season. So I can start planning Baseball Palooza right away. The Great Lakes Loons are on the itinerary for Baseball Palooza 2025. So this is a team that I will get to see in person after featuring them on the podcast here.
Wow, that's how appropriate then. So this episode got you thinking about your Baseball Palooza trip. What it got me thinking about was how many teams there are in affiliated minor league baseball that have bird identities.
It's a lot.
And I counted them. And I'm going to ask you if you want to take, this is not the Studio Simon Stumper because we're not stumping yet.
No, that's later.
But I'm going to ask you if you want to take a wild guess how many, there are 120 affiliated minor league teams, as we know. How many of those, take a wild guess, are bird-themed identities?
I'm going to say, would it be as many as a full quarter of all minor league baseball teams? That would be like 30. If it's a quarter, which it kind of feels like, I'm going to say, since it's not a stumper and I can be kind of imprecise about it, I'm going to say like 25 to 30 affiliated minor league teams are bird-based.
Paul, you are way off.
Oh, no.
There are 60 teams named after birds. No,
half? You had me there. I was like, that can't be.
I am kidding. Would you believe there are only a baker's dozen?
Wow, 13 of them, huh?
Yep. That's counting the Aberdeen Ironbirds, which can be argued as a plane and not a bird, even though it's got a bird face.
If you don't count the Ironbirds, it's 12, which is exactly 10%. I would have thought way more than 10% of minor league baseball logos are bird-based.
Now that I've counted how many bird identities there are, I am now going to make certain categories: dogs, cats, humans, whatever. I'm not sure what all the categories will end up being. Like you've got the Winston-Salem Dash, and so that's a category of containing one of punctuation marks that they've got their own category. So I'm not sure if there'll be a catch-all category, but there's certainly a lot of mammals. There are insects, there are reptiles, there are
industry, history.
Yeah, et cetera, et cetera. But it'll be interesting for me to see what single group is the biggest group, because there certainly are a lot of birds. You thought there were more than there actually are, which maybe makes us think, well, maybe there are not as many dogs as we thought there were, not as many cats as we thought there were. So I'm curious what the breakdown is going to be. And I'm going to do that. And I don't know if that's fuel for an entire episode to talk about that.
I would love to do an episode like that. I'm a huge lister. I love lists. Once I hit all 50 states, I had to start finding other ways to list out the 50 states. I can tell you that I have been running for a distance of at least 3 miles in 39 states. I've been running in 10 foreign countries. And I have not yet seen a baseball game in the state of Michigan. That's another list that I keep, except for Baseball Palooza. We're going to see 2. We're going to see the Whitecaps, and we're going to see the Great Lakes Loons. So I can't believe we haven't even done the stumper yet, Dan, and I've already gotten the stumper wrong.
Well, but it wasn't the stumper, but it certainly is the lead into the stumper. And when I get back here in a few, we'll talk some more about it. So I'll see you in a little bit.
All right, we're going to get into the interviews now. Chris Munhank from the team is here. AJ Chlebnik is going to be our guest wildlife correspondent. And then, of course, you'll be back with a stumper. Dan, we'll see you in a little bit.
Okay, see you then.
Welcome to the podcast, Chris Munhank, who is the president and general manager for the Great Lakes Loons. Chris, good morning. How are you doing?
I am doing excellent. Thanks for having me. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing very well. We are just at the time of this recording, a couple of months out from our Baseball Palooza road trip, which Midland, Michigan will be a stop. I'm going to finally get to a Loons game. I'll get to meet you in person in August. So I'm super excited about that. So this will be a great learning experience for me to know what this brand is all about and to know what Midland, Michigan is all about here. So I'm going to jump right in and ask you, why is a team that is based, I'm going to do this with my hand because
Yes.
it's Michigan and that's the law. Why is a team, do I have it right? Like up here?
We are right here. So, the name, the town's name, Midland, is indicative kind of the geographic location. We're not quite in the middle of the Lower Peninsula. We're about in the middle point in relationship to north and south, but skew a little further east towards the Saginaw Bay.
Well, for the listener at home, Chris was pointing just above the ball of his thumb on the crease of his palm here. So that is roughly where Midland is. I should have figured, based on the name there, but I have been mapping out our Baseball Palooza routes, so I should have known better where you were going to be. We have one guy who's coming in a day late, and we have to pick him up in Detroit, and so we're sort of going way out of our way on our way from the Iowa Cubs up to Midland, Michigan to pick him up. Anyhow, back to my question: what is a Loon, and why is a team that is based in Midland, Michigan called the Great Lakes Loons?
I think as someone that's not originally from the state of Michigan, but I am now a Michigander. In general, I think people in this region and in the Great Lakes region, I think some are hard in that, it's inevitable. You will get through the summer, hopefully have a terrific fall, but the Michigan winters hit. And I think as a result, people that live in this region maximize their time outdoors. I would say specifically up north, whether that's spending time on a lake in these small lake towns, maybe going to a friend or family's cabin. And when we were really going through the process initially back in 2006 on the team name, we had a name the team contest. We had over 4,000 entries, and it was quite literally the full gamut of names. And, as we started looking at those and narrowing down, we wanted something that was indicative of the region, and we wanted to be indicative of summertime in Michigan. For us, that is up north, that is at the lake, that is outside by the fire at night. And a loon, a common loon, is something that you will see on a vast majority of inland lakes throughout the state of Michigan. And so the Loons really encapsulates what it means, that outdoor Michigan summer. But, being a loon, there's an element of, it attacks and dives and hunts underwater. There's an element of that, but the loon call itself is very distinct and unique. The loon markings are unique and distinct. And we wanted to also be unique and distinct while still having that up north vibe. We ultimately became Great Lakes Loons in that our team is really a regional team. The stadium is in Midland, but we are now positioned where we truly feel that we're everyone's hometown team, whether you live in Midland, Bay City, Saginaw, Gladwin, Clare, you name it. There's really 14 counties throughout the Great Lakes Bay region, and Great Lakes really fit with the Loons from a regional perspective, but then again, tying back into the lakes, the Great Lakes, the outdoors.
So the team has been around since 2007. If I'm correct, you have been with the team for the duration. Is that right?
Correct. So I joined the club in the summer of 2006, as we were building out our staff, the stadium was under construction. We hadn't yet revealed the name at that point. We did our formal reveal August 26th of 2006. That's when the Loons officially landed from a name, logo, identity standpoint.
So 2006, 2007, in the minor league baseball logo landscape, we were just entering into this phase of the sort of wacky. I mean, we weren't anywhere near where we are now with the wackiness, the crazy identities. You know, you had the Mudcats, you had the Montgomery Biscuits. You know, you had a few sort of outliers there. It was before the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. It was before the El Paso Chihuahuas, and so Loons has a kind of, you know, a second sense to it. You know, it means like sort of a silly person, right? Like, so it's not just the bird. Was that kind of outrageous at the time? The idea that we're going to name this team after a bird, but also, you know, it has this sort of secondary significance.
You know, at the time we were talking internally, you know, would we want something, an element of outrageousness? That wasn't really what our brand was about. Mm-hmm. You know, our brand values are about quality. You know, we perceive the brand about high quality, whether that's high quality entertainment, a high quality facility, best in class. And we wanted an identity that reflected that. And when we were going through the process on the original identity, we have since updated that. We did an update in 2016. The general premise was that we wanted the logo, whether it was the primary, secondary, cap logos, the entire family of logos, to have a classic feel and to feel well established with almost a regal quality. And we felt that would serve us long, you know, over time. And, you know, at that juncture, no one had experienced Loons baseball and our brand of entertainment. But I think it has been very consistent over the years. And that has really served us well, and that it bears out and is a strong connectivity to the brand itself. And you know, that brand is about families coming together, spending time up north, outdoors in the summertime in the form of Loons baseball at Dow Diamond. And that's what we were really going for, rather than some quirky, perhaps off the wall. We wanted to be founded in kind of quality but a classic feel.
So you mentioned the 2016 rebrand. You worked with Brandiose on that, and it was really a refresh of your existing brand. You know, the colors stayed the same for the most part, and then the artwork was refreshed, made a bit more contemporary. Who created the first brand?
That is a great question. I was assuming you were going to ask that. It happened in such a short time frame. There was so much going on. We quite literally broke ground of the stadium April 14th of 06, and our first game was April 13th, 07.
Oh, wow.
We moved at the speed of light for that 12 months, and all of that happened prior to my arrival.
So when you went into that rebrand, then what was the thinking in, you know, that brand had been around for about 8 years at that point. What was the thinking in deciding to do the refresh, but also maintaining that sort of brand equity that already existed?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we had built up a lot of brand equity, and we were very recognizable in our market throughout the region. We didn't want to lose that connectivity. We didn't want to kind of, in essence, blow up and start from scratch. We didn't want a revolution. We wanted an evolution. We still wanted a nod to the original identity. And we went through a number of iterations with Brandiose, everything from an extreme classic feel that I would equate to perhaps a circa 1950s Donald Duck look and feel, like almost a cartoonish version of a loon, that we felt didn't quite hit the mark, to an outdoor spin that included some buffalo plaid integrated. We felt like that was too far of a shift. Ultimately, as we were going through that process and looking at some of the initial sketches, what ultimately became our current identity just felt right. It was more modern or contemporary, as you referenced. It still had that nod to the original identity, but was updated in a way that I thought was more compelling, and I thought in a stronger way encapsulated that up north summertime Michigan vibe. So you have the Loons head, but behind that Loons head, you have the pine trees across the horizon. We were thoughtful with what the color of the horizon or the sky. We wanted to be night, in that you predominantly play your games at night. But we wanted to pull in that green, but we wanted a green that gave you the essence of like a pine tree forest. So it's a bit of a lighter green. It's not a super dark. I think it's like a 342 is the Pantone color.
All right.
And it gives you a little bit more of that. It's not quite that dark forest green, but that serves the backdrop, kind of the night sky, and then with the twinkling stars. When you see that, it says summertime Michigan, but still encapsulates kind of the overall vibe within the look and feel of that primary.
I can't wait to experience this Michigan in the summertime here. I'm super excited to that night sky scene really is very compelling. I want to ask you about a couple of your alternate identities, but before I do, I am a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles when it comes to football season anyway. And I'm compelled to ask here because this always sort of fascinates me. In the update from the original logo to the current version, the loon went from facing from left to right to facing from right to left. And the reason I tie that to the Philadelphia Eagles is because I believe the Eagles are the only NFL logo that faces from right to left. Was that part of the conversation, or was that just more sort of a compositional thing?
It was more compositional than anything pre-existing. When we talk about balance, so on the primary, you have the Loons custom font with a swooping element under the Loons that really serves as the Loons wing. From a balance standpoint, we wanted that Loons head facing towards the left to balance that out, because if you look at the primary deconstructed, that also serves as the jersey crest. However, the primary hat mark for the home cap is a loon facing towards the right. We felt that looked stronger than facing towards the left. And so that's why you'll see on the primary faces towards the left, home cap faces towards the right. There was also some thought just on the connectivity to the original logo set. The original jersey script or crest had Loons in a script font with a kind of a traditional swoosh or swoop under it coming off the S, with the loon head incorporated into the crest facing off to the left. So that was kind of a nod to that original jersey. And I think it provides a little bit more balance. When we looked at it tilted facing the opposite way, it was going to be aligned above the L, which is a capital L. And it didn't look as balanced.
All right. So anyone who talks to me for more than 3 minutes will know that I recently had the opportunity to travel to Morocco. It was my very first time on the African continent. I rode a camel, which I had never done before. That was very cool. I assume, based on the fact that there is a Great Lakes camels alternate identity, that I'm going to get to do that again in Midland. Are there a lot of camels in the Great Lakes?
Unfortunately, there are not a lot of camels. We rolled that alternate identity out I want to say it was 2016 or 17, but there were a lot of things that predated that launch. It actually happened organically over time. This was 2009, and we had a team that performed extremely well in the second half. And our, at the time, video production manager, Chris Lonis, had an idea to take a video clip. I think it was from America's Funniest Home Videos, where a kid was at a zoo and a camel made this horribly annoying noise. And it was literally like something to the effect of, and it really scared the kid, but it was a really funny clip. He thought that he could deploy that kind of late in a game in moments where the team was down by 1, 2, 3 runs or less, where we had runners in scoring position, and flash this video and position it as Ral E. Camel. And he did it on a night, and our crowd responded. They started mimicking that noise, and it was extremely annoying, but very loud. And we had a walk-off win that night. Oh. So he put some parameters in place when he would deploy that. We wound up having 9 or 10 walk-off wins that season in the second half. It was incredible. Well, fast forward, we make our first ever playoff appearance, and we wanted to do something around that. So started doing some research, and we found a camel at a children's petting zoo south of us in the Flint market. And the camel's name was Gunther.
Nice.
Very friendly camel. And we engaged with them about the possibility of having Gunther come, but come as Ral E. Camel.
Nice.
So throughout the process, we wound up having a Loons hat with some elastic that Gunther wore. We put a Loons blanket over his hump.
Nice.
And we did a formal intro of the camel in person for the first time that night to the theme song from Space Odyssey 2001. We had this real dramatic buildup of the dreaded dromedary, and this camel came out and the place went nuts, and he circled around the warning track, and then fans could get their picture taken with Ral E. Camel on the concourse that night. Well, we actually had a walk-off win that night for our first ever playoff win. Our manager at the time said, "Hey, I want that camel back tomorrow night." So we had to pull some strings, get the camel back. Well, we had built up a lot of equity with our fans, and at that juncture began working with Brandios to formally build out Rally Camel as a mascot. And we introduced Rally Camel opening day 2010. We had a mysterious package that was delivered with instructions to open on opening day. And we had kind of a theatrical process, worked with a local pyro group, and Louis used a plunger to blow open the container, and Ral E. Camel was born. And Rowley served as a secondary mascot for a number of years. And then that ultimately led into the alternate identity as the Great Lakes Camels. The Great Lakes Camels as an alternate identity is no longer with us, but still is part of our history. And we will occasionally deploy Rally. We had a true crime night last year where we told the story of where Rally has been. And we've had a lot of fun with it over the years. And that served us really well because it was unique and different, but still was something that happened organically over time.
There's so much more to that story than I ever thought there would be or could be. So I'm very glad I asked that question. I don't suppose, since that identity is not in use anymore, that there are going to be Great Lakes Camels dad hats in the team store when we get there in August.
While there may not be officially in the team store, I have a sneaking suspicion we may have some on reserve.
Oh my goodness! Well, I will. I may come knocking on the administrative door there when we get there in August. Okay, last one I wanted to ask you about. More recently, just last year, in fact, you unveiled the pontooners, and the headline I wrote in the Sports Logos article was, Great Lakes Loons to celebrate boat life as pontooners. Tell me about pontooners and boat life in the Great Lakes.
So, I had referenced the original, the thought of the identity and what people here in this region do. And it goes back to that people here summer hard, whether it's spending time out on the lake, cruising at sunset, spending nights under the stars, the fire pit. They really try to squeeze every last ounce out of summer. And we in this region view there are two rites of passage each summer. It's Loons baseball and time spent up north at the lake. And we just felt like this was such a great way to marry or fuse those two rites of passage to become the Great Lakes Pontooners. And it's a way to have an extension of the existing brand, but do it in a fun, unique, and creative way. The jerseys themselves are fully sublimated. It runs the full gamut of colors of the sunset, from your reds and orange and yellows down to the blues of the water. And it's something that has really served us well. It was a way to, again, be unique and different, but really speak to people in this region, and I argue outside of the region. It's all about maximizing that time you have outdoors. And the Great Lakes Pontooners is really what, spoke to us. When I think of a pontoon boat, I think of dad driving it or grandpa driving it. Maybe you're doing a cruise at the sunset, or you've got the kids on the back tubing. So if you see some of the secondary marks, there's a kid tubing. And it was a way to pull all of that in. And here, for the longest time, the Loons tagline has been "Dive in, it's Loons baseball time." This was a shift to, summer hard, it's pontooners baseball time.
Dive in, is that because that's what loons do when they're hunting for fish?
It is, and it served a number of purposes. So dive in, means it's about action. It's about an all-in. It has served us not just from a marketing standpoint, but it's become in our internal kind of rallying cry is, if we have a staff meeting, okay, it's time to dive in. At times we've heard players say that, hey, let's dive in. Fans say it. So it's been with us and been part of our identity for a long time.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, this has been absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate you taking time out of your morning to chat with me about the Great Lakes Loons. Where can people find the team online and on social media?
They can go on loons.com and find everything out about the Loons, the Great Lakes Pontooners. They can seek us out on Facebook, Twitter, or X, I should say, Instagram, TikTok. We're there, permeated across really all social handles. Check us out, especially on TikTok. Give an opportunity to see some of the more unique, fun side of the brand. A big part of that is Louie Loon. Louie is really our brand ambassador and everyone's fine feathered friend. And you can check him out as well as a lot of other great things across all social handles.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, I look forward to meeting you in person during Baseball Palooza this summer. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Likewise. Looking forward to it, Paul.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am here live in Fort Collins, Colorado with native Michigander AJ Chlebnik. AJ, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Fort Collins.
It's a beautiful day. We're talking about the Great Lakes Loons. You were born outside of Flint. You lived in Michigan for 18 years. You've been to Great Lakes Loons games. But more importantly, you are pinch hitting for Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent, Ranger Amy Burnett, our good friend Ranger Amy, because you are also a naturalist and you are also very well versed in birds. The Great Lakes Loons, this is your hometown team during your childhood. Before we get into the birds themselves, what was your experience growing up going to Loons games?
Yeah, I absolutely love baseball. I grew up going to a lot of Tigers games, but I realize that's Major League, and that's something totally different than what we're talking about.
That's okay. We can talk about Tigers too.
But yeah, as I got a little older, we would go to Loons games, mostly when I came home from college, actually. And so I would go with my parents. They have been buying ticket packs to the Great Lakes Loons for the past 7 or 8 years. As one of their favorite things to do in the summer. And so that's kind of what I associate the Loons with, is having a really good time out at the ballpark with my family. And they still go. I just don't get to go anymore because I live in Colorado. But yeah, they go every year. They're big time fans, especially for the fireworks games.
The fireworks games, and there are a lot of those in minor league baseball anymore. I should point out too that my house is full of Great Lakes Loons gear because your father is always so generous with the ballpark giveaways. He shows up every time he comes to visit you. We've been to Rockies games together. Mm-hmm. I met him after you and I had both finished the Horsetooth Half Marathon. You are a fellow runner. We run together. Your dad is always bringing me Loons stuff because he knows I like minor league baseball, and he's brought me. I have a blanket. I had a baseball cap that I gave to our mutual friend Kathy, who is also a bird enthusiast. And I've got baseballs from the team. I have a DVD of their championship season that your dad brought me. So your dad is very much a fan of the Loons, which is really fun for me, and the reason I have a lot of Loon stuff in my house. So the Loon itself, as a mascot, from your perspective as a naturalist, what makes it a great mascot for a baseball team?
Oh yeah, so the Loon is a fishing bird.
Okay.
And when it dives, it's absolutely lethal in the water, especially going after fish. So as I was learning more about Loons and diving into them, I really got...
So to speak.
Yeah, that was unintentional, but let's say it wasn't. I really was surprised by how quick they move in the water. They're terrible at walking. I don't know what the record is for the Great Lakes Loons team with walks, but Loons are terrible at it. But they are really lethal divers and really good fishers. And so I don't know how fast they can go, but they spend all their lives in the water and are they're kind of like underwater bird missiles. They can turn on a dime as well, and do flips that even like swimmers are.
So bad at walking. I wonder who's a free swinging ball player who just never draws a walk, right? Like they're the Nick Castellanos of birds, I guess. Bad at walking. So they're really good in the water. They're lethal fishers. What are they like physically? How big do they get? What do they look like?
So big. I don't know. Look that up. We can Google it though. But
do you do that on your nature walks? I don't know. Google it.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's Google it all the time. I have Merlin is my favorite bird app of all time, and I use that constantly. But they are, I want to say they're kind of like duck size, like your standard waterfowl, maybe a little smaller. And they spend as I mentioned before, all their lives on the water or in the air. They, in the summertime, have this very classic, like black and white spotted tuxedo looking pattern with the reddish eyes. That's their breeding plumage, and so that's when they're really showing off and trying to look fancy. And then they're kind of in the off season, non-breeding season, kind of nondescript gray and white, and you'll find them hanging out on the coastlines. But they really like those inland freshwater lakes and reservoirs, and so and they'll only hang out on them if the water's clear, because they got to be able to see the fish they're diving after. Okay. And so they're really an indicator of good water quality, which I love from an environmentalist perspective. So good water quality indicators, and really kind of fancy looking birds as well.
Fancy looking birds. This logo has a lot of green in it, a couple different shades of green. And I know that's largely the sort of trees and the environment that they're living in this sort of very, beautiful, pristine, natural area. Growing up, you were outside of Flint, but the sort of larger lower peninsula, I know we talk about the upper peninsula. Do we call it the lower peninsula when we're talking about that part of Michigan?
You do, or you can just call it the Mitten.
The Mitten, right? Okay. All right, so this is an audio podcast, but show me on the Mitten where Midland is.
It's so I grew up here, Midland's kind of up here, kind of a little bit in the Thumb Pit, if I remember correctly.
Okay. It's interesting to me because previously on this episode we talked about the Mitten, and Other folks on this episode so far have turned their hand forward, and you turned your hand backwards to show. So, all right.
Well, you know why that is because I'm left-handed, and so if you're right-handed, this would totally make more sense. But I'm left-handed, and so I automatically.
It's the other hand.
Mm-hmm. So I have to turn it backwards so it's facing the right way.
That part of Michigan, I'm going to see it during Baseball Palooza. I'm very excited to see it. What's in store for me? What am I going to see in this area, the natural environment of Midland, Michigan?
Yeah, so tons of water, which is a change from our Colorado environment. We've got one big body of water, but Michigan, water's everywhere.
Yeah.
Midland is really near the lakes and rivers, and so it's just nice, lush green trees. What I remember about growing up in Michigan, and I was not a naturalist when I lived there, but just all the green everywhere, and it's very humid. But if you like that sort of thing.
Right. That logo really reflects that green. You mentioned the red eye, which is definitely part of the logo for this team. Why is its eye red? Why do they have red eyes?
That's a great question, Paul.
Let's Google it.
Let's Google it. I absolutely don't know. This is what the internet says, is that their eyes are red because of the pigments in their retinas. The pigments in their retinas filter all of the wavelengths except for red. Back to red light. And they're red all year round in their whole lives. But fish and other aquatic animals cannot detect red light.
All right. One of the things, that I know birders love to do, they like to imitate calls. They like the sounds that birds make. They often are identifying birds by sounds. In baseball, right? Like we're using a lot of chatter. We're using a lot of verbal signals. What are the loons' calls like?
I cannot possibly imitate this.
I would never ask you to do that on the spot without warning you.
But loons' calls are very easily identifiable in any creepy movie that you've seen with like foggy water, or even a movie that even takes place in the jungle, a place you would never find a loon. They have a very eerie, like, ooh. That's the best I can do.
Sounds like an owl a little bit.
A little bit like an owl. So they have a very eerie rising and falling call that sounds very ghostly. They use it a lot in the movies to just kind of creep people out. Very often. And a lot of pop stars have actually sampled the call of the loon in their music.
Really?
Yeah. Everybody from like Doja Cat, Lady Gaga, Nicki Minaj, even though she wrote a song called Anaconda, which had jungle sounds in it. We don't need to get into that. But
for the listener at home, AJ is making a lot of finger quotes here.
She used the loon in the background of that as well. So it's used pretty widely in pop culture in places you wouldn't expect.
So it's in a rural area. It's got red eyes, and it makes a creepy, eerie sound. This is like a horror show bird here. I had no idea.
A little bit.
Because they're kind of adorable looking, right? Like when you were Googling just now, you found one and you said, look how cute they are. Like they look kind of cute, but there's a little bit of sort of a horror show element to them.
They can give, with their calls and the way that they sound, they can give a very eerie presence, especially because a lot of times they'll call at night when it's dark in large groups, and it sounds like a whole gaggle of ghosts all together.
A whole gaggle of ghosts all together.
So that can be very, going back to baseball, you could use that call to be low-key intimidating, I guess, to the other team. I don't know how the Loons use it in their games. I don't remember, but
I guess I'll learn that in August when we're there for Baseball Palooza. The other thing I'll learn is whether they have ice cream helmets with the Loons logo on them. Important information for all of us.
Last time I went, they did have
They
that.
did. I believe you even brought me one.
I think you might have one.
I think there's a gift from you in the Helmet Sunday Hall of Fame, or the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame, as Dan likes to call it. So, all right, so one last question for you, AJ, sort of a catch-all question here, which is, I always like to know about these mascots' sort of qualities as potentially as a baseball player. If you have a loon on your baseball team, what position does he play? Or she?
I got to think about that. So they're speedy.
Okay.
But they're not fast on land.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they're the catcher.
Okay.
Because they are heavier and a little more solid than other birds. Instead of having hollow bones, which most of you know, many birds have hollow bones. It helps them to fly. Instead of having hollow bones, they have solid bones, and that actually makes them less buoyant, so they're able to dive better and faster. And when they go to dive, they can push all of the air out of their feathers to make them even speedier. So
I love
what player would this bird play as a vehicle for learning these things, right? Because that's a cool fact. They have solid bones. They'd be just like a big sturdy backstop back there. If a base runner tries to bowl them over on a close play at home, they're going to hold their ground.
It's not happening.
It's not happening. They got those big solid bones. That's super cool, right? And like you say, the hollow bones help most birds fly. The solid bones help this bird dive.
Yeah.
It seems to me, and no offense to the Great Lakes Loons here, that perhaps they'd have been a better mascot for like a water polo team than a baseball team or an underwater baseball team. Maybe that would be something.
Underwater baseball.
Underwater baseball would be great.
I would love to see that.
I've played wiffle ball where if you hit the ball into the ocean, it was a home run.
Yes.
So it got easier to hit home runs as the tide came in.
Got a time when your at bat is.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we'll be the home team so that we can bat last as the tide comes in.
Absolutely. So the other reason that the loon should be a catcher, that should be their position, is because in their mouths they have backwards pointing spikes in their bills. And so when they catch a fish, the fish gets stuck. And it can't come back out. So they're really good at keeping it in place.
So they're really good at catching.
They're really good at catching fish for sure, and maybe baseball.
Maybe a problem though if they're trying to throw out someone trying to steal second and the ball's like stuck in their.
That's fair. That's fair. They could. They just have to fly over there maybe.
They
need a pool so they can take off and fly.
That's right. They need to get really underwater really fast out to second base. It sounds a little bit like the barbs in their teeth are like the do not reverse over these tracks after you leave the rental car place.
Yes, they are exactly like that.
Very cool. All right. That's excellent. Thanks for coming on Baseball by Design, AJ. I can't believe it's taken us this long to get you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It's time once again for the Studio Simon Stumper. Dan, thanks for hanging out for a little bit while we chatted about the team. Welcome back. We're ready for some stumpers.
You're welcome. I haven't just been hanging out. I've been keeping myself busy.
You've got a lot of work to do. Yeah, I get it.
And so now I'm back, and we were talking about there being a baker's dozen, 13 affiliated minor league baseball teams with bird identities, if you include the Aberdeen Ironbirds, which, as we said, might be a plane, but you're giving me the Ironbirds.
I am.
And so our Studio Simon Stumper today asks, which of these minor league baseball clubs' logo artwork features a bird that is not a diving bird? Now, diving, let me be specific about that. Diving down into the water.
Okay.
I guess, think about a hawk. They do, or peregrine falcons, whatever. I think it's peregrine falcons. They do this diving thing in the air.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about diving down for food.
Okay.
Okay. So which of these is not a diving bird? Which of the logo artwork features a bird that is not a diving bird? And that's okay. Is it A, the Toledo Mud Hens?
Okay.
B, the Myrtle Beach Pelicans? Or C, the subject of today's episode, the Great Lakes Loons?
Pelicans are definitely diving birds. They go in, they scoop. The mud hens, they were described by none other than Jamie Farr in episode 4 of this podcast that we did about the Jamie Farr, obviously the MASH actor who played Klinger. He described them as fat little game birds. So I don't know if a game bird would be a diving bird. I think a loon. I'm pretty sure a loon is a diving bird. I'm fairly certain that pelicans are diving birds. I've seen it happen at the ocean. But mud hens are fat little game birds that I don't think are diving birds. Now, if I get this wrong, my friend AJ, our guest wildlife correspondent, and Baseball by Design's full-time wildlife correspondent, Ranger Amy, are going to be super disappointed in me. But I'm going to go mud hens are not a diving bird.
Okay. First of all, is Ranger Amy around?
No, she's I don't know where she is. We have a foster puppy right now that is taking all of Ranger Amy's time. This puppy is cute. The puppy is cute, but man, what a nuisance.
I follow you guys. I don't know if you made this post I don't know if Ranger Amy made the post, you made the post on Baseball by Design, or you posted you've got a Paul J. Caputo. I follow all of that. So I've seen several photos of this dog. It is adorable.
Super cute.
But I can easily see how a puppy can be a nuisance. So here's the deal. You said you have witnessed with your own eyes
Oh boy.
pelicans diving into the water at the ocean. Okay. What color were those pelicans?
Oh, this is you. What trickery here, Dan, that you're pulling on me, because we've talked about the fact that the Myrtle Beach Pelicans have the wrong color pelican as their logo. They have a white pelican and it should be a brown pelican. And so what you're about to tell me, I can see where this is going. The brown pelican is a diving bird, but the white pelican is not. Is that what you're about to tell me?
That is indeed
Holy smokes.
the white. Now, who knew? Like, why is there a pelican that dives and one that doesn't? They're
Right.
essentially the same animal. They look the same except for color. Now, one of the things I'm interested to know, I didn't look this up when doing this research. Who knows? Maybe one is a bigger bird than the other, one's smaller. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe there is some type of appreciable difference, and maybe there's a reason for this. But white pelicans, which are officially known as American white pelicans, it's exactly what you said. They do not plunge dive like brown pelicans and loons and mud hens. Mud hens, by the way, are also known as the American coot. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did know that actually, yes.
But rather, the white pelicans, American white pelicans, they feed from the water's surface. Like they dip their head down into the water to get a fish or whatever I don't know what else they'd be getting out of the water, but they're not plunge divers.
Dan, to get that right took some deep minor league baseball logo knowledge and then some deep bird knowledge and also critical thinking abilities that I apparently did not have. I sensed that what you were saying about the bird featured in the logo, like you were saying that very carefully, and I sensed that there was more importance to that than I gave it.
I purposely emphasized that.
You did.
And repeated it because I am sure that there's already been an episode about the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, and I'm sure they're named the Pelicans because of the brown pelicans that are ubiquitous there.
Sure.
And in that podcast, Ranger Amy, well, she actually mentioned it when we were at the Myrtle Beach Pelicans game. I remember
we went to the Pelicans for one of our Anadanapalooza games.
Right. And then I'm sure that was brought up also in the podcast about the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. So the genesis of their name are brown pelicans, but their artwork features a white pelican. And so that's why I made sure to say which of these minor league baseball clubs logo artwork features a bird that is not a diving bird. So sorry, maybe that's if that constitutes trickery, I'm guilty as charged.
No, it was just like, you know how like the New York Times, connections or crossword puzzles or whatever, like sometimes they're real hard and sometimes they're not. This was a hard one because it required that deep level of minor league baseball logo knowledge to remember that the Myrtle Beach Pelicans have the wrong pelican. But it also would have required me to know, which I would never have guessed, that one kind of pelican's a diving bird and the other kind of pelican is not. So that's where I would have been thwarted anyway.
Well, I have often said, and I'm going to say it now, and I'm going to say it again later because it's true. The things you learn because of minor league baseball. I was watching an episode of Jeopardy with my wife, AJ. And by the way, this episode features a guest named AJ.
How about that?
It's this confluence of all kinds of things. And my wife is way smarter than I am. I think she's smarter than I am. And at the very least, if she's not technically smarter than I am, which she is better educated than I am. She learned a lot more in her schooling than I did. And so she's much better at answering Jeopardy questions than I am. And recently we were watching an episode of Jeopardy, and I answered something that she did not know. And whenever I do that, she says, "Oh, good one," which is a little condescending. So
Don't patronize
basically,
me.
it means you're usually so stupid. How'd you know that one? And I had to admit that the only reason, and I don't remember what the question was, the only reason I knew it was because it had something to do with something I knew because of minor league baseball, frankly. And it might have been something I knew because of a stumper. I don't remember exactly, but it was definitely minor league baseball. And I had to admit, I only know that because of minor league baseball. But think of the things we've learned that,
Like 80% of the stuff I know is because of minor league baseball. So
yeah.
Dan, this has been so much fun. This was a particularly fun one. Thank you as always. Hey, we don't say this enough. Go find Dan Simon on Instagram at studio_Simon and online at studiosimon.net.
Yeah, I have to apologize if you out there are going to go do that and you've done it before. I don't have a recent post. So even though I had something to post, I'm just busy. You know?
I know. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Okay.
Speaking of which, we'll see you soon.
Yeah. See you next time, Paul.